"She looks like my dead daughter," Alien Queen said when she saw the human janitor's child. Then, before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The gleaming corridors of Diplomatic Station Helios were known for their pristine condition, maintained by a staff of custodians drawn from across the galaxy. Among them was Blake Turner, a human janitor who had taken his young daughter Lily to work after his childcare arrangements fell through unexpectedly. Blake pushed his cleaning cart down the polished corridor of the station's diplomatic wing, keeping a watchful eye on 6-year-old Lily who skipped alongside him. Her dark curls bounced with each step, her bright blue eyes wide with wonder at the alien architecture and visitors that filled the massive space station. Blake had worked here for 3 years, but for Lily, every visit was an adventure. "Remember the rules, sweetheart," Blake reminded her gently. "Stay where I can see you, don't touch anything without asking, and be polite to everyone." "I know, Daddy," Lily nodded, clutching her worn stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Can I help you clean?" Blake smiled and handed her a small duster. "Just the baseboards, okay? Nothing too high." As Blake went about his duties, he couldn't help but reflect on how they had ended up here, 400,000 kilometers from Earth. After Sarah's death from a rare disease 3 years ago, he had been desperate for a fresh start. The opportunity to work on Helios Station had seemed like divine intervention: good pay, housing included, and a chance to raise Lily somewhere new. What he hadn't anticipated was how isolating it would be to be one of only a few hundred humans among thousands of alien diplomats and workers. His supervisor, Station Manager Garrett, had been understanding about his childcare emergency today, but Blake knew he couldn't make a habit of bringing Lily to work. Still, watching her delicately dust along the wall with intense concentration made his heart swell with pride. She was resilient, just like her mother had been. "Alert! Alert!" The station's AI announced suddenly, its synthetic voice echoing through the corridor. "Royal delegation from Vexera approaching. All non-essential personnel vacate diplomatic wing immediately." Blake froze. The Vexerans were notoriously private and held tremendous political power in the Galactic Council. Their visits were rare and always announced weeks in advance. This unexpected arrival meant something significant was happening. "Lily, come here quickly," Blake called, gesturing frantically. But before Lily could reach him, a procession of tall, elegant figures rounded the corner. The Vexerans moved with preternatural grace, their iridescent scales shifting colors with each movement. Their elongated bodies towered over the human janitor, reaching nearly 3 meters in height. Each wore intricate ceremonial armor that seemed to be made of living metal, flowing and adjusting to their movements. At their center walked a figure who could only be their queen. She wore an elaborate crown of what appeared to be crystallized light, and her scales shimmered with a deeper, more vibrant hue than her companions. The royal guards flanking her carried staff weapons that hummed with contained energy. Blake grabbed his cart and tried to become invisible against the wall, gesturing desperately for Lily to join him. But his daughter stood transfixed in the middle of the corridor, directly in the path of the royal procession. "Lily," Blake hissed, panic rising in his chest. The Vexeran queen halted abruptly, causing her entire entourage to freeze in perfect unison. Her vertical pupils dilated as she stared down at the small human child. The guards tensed, their weapons shifting to ready positions. Blake's heart hammered against his ribs. Interfering with Vexeran royalty could result in diplomatic incidents, or worse. But this was his daughter. He stepped forward, prepared to snatch Lily away regardless of consequences. Before he could reach her, the queen made a strange, musical sound that the universal translators couldn't process. Then she spoke in perfect galactic standard. "She looks like my dead daughter," the alien queen said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance that made the air vibrate. The corridor fell into absolute silence. Even the ambient hum of the station seemed to quiet in response to the queen's declaration. Then, to Blake's horror, the towering Vexeran queen sank to one knee before Lily, bringing her face level with the child's. The guards looked as shocked as Blake felt, their postures rigid with confusion. "What is your name, small one?" the queen asked, her voice gentler now. Lily, seemingly unaffected by the tension around her, clutched her rabbit tighter and answered clearly. "I'm Lily Turner. I'm 6 3/4. This is Mr. Flopsy." She held up her stuffed rabbit as evidence. A ripple of something that might have been amusement passed through the queen's entourage. "I am Queen Zalera of the Vexaran Imperium," the queen responded with formal gravity, as though addressing a fellow sovereign. "My daughter was called Celia. She would have been the equivalent of your 6 3/4 when she joined the ancestors." Blake edged closer, ready to intervene. Everyone knew the Vexarans were an ancient species with powerful psychic abilities. They were respected and feared in equal measure throughout the galaxy. And now their queen was having a conversation with his daughter in the middle of a diplomatic corridor. "I'm sorry your daughter died," Lily said with the direct compassion only children seem capable of. "My mommy died too. It makes my heart hurt sometimes." The queen's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of emotion among Vexarans. "Yes, the heart hurt. That is an accurate description." One of the royal advisors leaned forward and whispered urgently to the queen, likely reminding her of protocols and schedules. Queen Zalera raised a six-fingered hand, silencing him without looking away from Lily. "Forgive the intrusion," Blake said, finally finding his voice as he stepped forward. "I'm Blake Turner, Lily's father. I'm a custodial technician on the station. There was a childcare issue today. You care for your offspring yourself?" Queen Zalera interrupted, her attention shifting to Blake. "That is unusual in a male of any species." Blake swallowed hard. "She's my daughter. It's my responsibility and privilege to care for her." The queen studied him with unnerving intensity. Among Vexarans, offspring are raised communally after being hatched. Individual attachment is considered inefficient. "We humans are very inefficient," Blake said with a nervous smile. To his surprise, Queen Zalera made a musical sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "Indeed, your species is known for its inefficiencies, and yet you thrive." Station Manager Garrett came sprinting down the corridor, his face pale with panic. Behind him walked the Galactic Council's head diplomat, Ambassador Krell, a tall Arcturian with silvery skin who looked equally distressed. "Your Majesty," the ambassador began, bowing deeply. "Please accept our profound apologies for this breach of protocol. The human will be disciplined immediately." "There will be no discipline," Queen Zalera declared, rising to her full height. She towered over everyone present, her crown nearly brushing the high ceiling. "I wish to speak with this child and her caretaker further." Blake felt the blood drain from his face. The ambassador looked equally shocked. "Your Majesty," Ambassador Krell said carefully, "your schedule is quite full. The emergency council session regarding the Kundari incursion can wait," the Queen finished firmly. "The Kundari have been encroaching on disputed territories for decades. This conversation is of greater immediate interest to me." Blake felt dozens of eyes on him. Human, Vexaran, and various other species who had gathered at a safe distance to witness the unprecedented scene. Lily, seemingly oblivious to the diplomatic earthquake she had caused, was showing Mr. Flopsy to the queen of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. "Perhaps," Blake suggested hesitantly, "we could move somewhere more private?" Queen Zalera's vertical pupils contracted slightly. "A reasonable suggestion. We shall use the Vexaran Embassy suite on level 7. Ambassador Krell looked like he might faint. "Your Majesty, that suite has been prepared for your delegation's privacy. To bring outsiders." "Do you question my decision, Ambassador?" The Queen's voice remained level, but the temperature in the corridor seemed to drop several degrees. "Of course not, Your Majesty," the ambassador replied quickly. Station Manager Garrett shot Blake a look that clearly communicated both sympathy and warning. This was beyond anything in the station's protocols. As the procession reorganized itself to include a human janitor and his daughter, Blake felt a growing sense of unreality. When he'd woken up this morning, his biggest concern had been finding someone to watch Lily for the day. Now they were being escorted to the private chambers of the Vexaran royal family. The Vexaran embassy suite was a marvel of alien architecture. The walls seemed to breathe, shifting slightly with subtle patterns that mimicked the iridescence of Vexaran scales. The gravity was slightly lighter than in the rest of the station, making Blake feel unnaturally buoyant with each step. "My guards and advisors will wait outside," Queen Zalera announced when they reached the central chamber. "I wish to speak with the small human and her father alone." Her entourage clearly wanted to object, but knew better than to contradict their monarch. They filed out silently, though several cast suspicious glances at Blake and Lily before leaving. Once they were alone, Queen Zalera gestured toward what appeared to be sitting platforms. "Please, make yourselves comfortable." Blake sat gingerly on the edge of the platform, which adjusted itself to better accommodate human physiology. Lily climbed up beside him, still clutching Mr. Flopsy. "I apologize if we've caused any trouble," Blake began, but the Queen waved his words away. "No apology is necessary. It was unexpected to encounter your offspring, but not unwelcome." Queen Zalera settled herself on a larger platform across from them. "The resemblance is quite remarkable. Your daughter has the same spiraling head filaments and ocular coloration as my Celia." Blake glanced at Lily's dark curls and blue eyes. "I didn't realize Vexarans and humans could look similar." "We cannot, in any objective sense," the Queen acknowledged. "Vexarans have scales, not skin. Our eyes have vertical pupils and can perceive spectrums invisible to humans. Celia had no hair, as you call it, but rather sensory tendrils that grow in similar patterns." She tilted her head slightly. "And yet, when I saw your daughter, I saw mine. Perhaps it is what your species calls pareidolia, the tendency to perceive significant patterns where none objectively exist. Or maybe souls just recognize each other sometimes," Lily offered, swinging her legs. The Queen went very still. "What do you know of souls, small human?" "My mommy told me before she died that souls are like stars. We can't always see them, but they're always there, even in daytime. And sometimes they make pictures together, like constellations." Blake felt his throat tighten at the memory. Sarah had been trying to prepare Lily for her inevitable death, creating metaphors a child could understand. Queen Zalera's inner eyelids flickered rapidly again. "Your offspring speaks with wisdom beyond her biological development." "Kids often do," Blake said softly. "They haven't learned to overthink things yet." The Queen nodded. "May I ask how your mate perished?" "Sarah, my wife, had Carrington's disease. It's a rare genetic disorder that causes progressive neural degradation. There's no cure." Blake unconsciously placed a protective arm around Lily. "We found out about it after Lily was born. Sarah had 3 years from diagnosis to the end." "And your daughter? Does she carry this genetic defect?" Blake tensed at the direct question, but answered truthfully. "No. Lily was tested. She's healthy." "That must provide some comfort," the Queen observed. "Every comfort," Blake agreed. Queen Zalera was silent for a moment, her gaze distant. "Celia was caught in a terrorist attack 5 cycles ago. Extremists who opposed Vexaran expansion into the Outer Rim systems. They targeted the educational facility where royal offspring are trained. 17 young ones perished, including my daughter." "I'm so sorry," Blake said, genuinely moved by the pain evident in the Queen's posture. "Since that day, I have led our fleet in subjugating the responsible systems," Queen Zalera continued. 16 worlds now serve as tribute colonies to the Imperium. The extremist faction has been eliminated completely." Blake felt a chill at the matter-of-fact way she described what must have been a brutal military campaign. The news reports from the Outer Rim had been heavily censored, but rumors of the Vexaran response had filtered through. Entire planets brought to their knees in retribution. "Did that make your heart hurt less?" Lily asked innocently. The Queen's attention snapped back to the child. "No," she admitted after a pause. "The heart hurt remains. Daddy says it's okay to be sad sometimes, but we have to keep living too. Mommy would want us to be happy." "An interesting perspective," Queen Zalera said. "Vexarans do not typically speak of the dead in such terms. Once one joins the ancestors, their individual desires cease to be relevant. But you remember your daughter, Blake pointed out gently. You carry her with you. Yes. The Queen's voice had changed, becoming softer, more vulnerable. It is not the Vexeran way. To dwell on individual loss is considered a weakness in a ruler. I have not spoken of Celia since her memorial ceremony. Blake recognized the universal pain of a grieving parent, a pain that transcended species, cultures, even vast evolutionary differences. In that moment, the terrifying alien queen was simply another parent who had lost a child. Sometimes talking helps, he offered. After Sarah died, I found a grief support group on the station. Just being able to say her name out loud to people who understood, it made a difference. Queen Zalera made a gesture Blake couldn't interpret. Vexerans do not share vulnerabilities, especially royalty. That sounds lonely, Lily said, hugging Mr. Flopsy tighter. The Queen's head swiveled toward Lily with startling speed. Yes, she said simply. It is lonely. A heavy silence fell over the room. Blake was acutely aware that they were having an intensely personal conversation with one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, someone who commanded fleets of warships and could decide the fate of entire star systems with a word. Lily slid off the sitting platform and approached the Queen, stopping just in front of her. Blake tensed, but didn't intervene. Would you like to hold Mr. Flopsy? Lily asked, holding up her treasured stuffed rabbit. He helps when I'm sad. For a moment, Queen Zalera looked genuinely bewildered. Then, with regal dignity, she extended her six-fingered hand and accepted the well-worn toy. She examined it carefully, turning it over in her elongated fingers. This comfort object has been repaired multiple times, she observed. He gets loved a lot, Lily explained seriously. I see. The Queen handed Mr. Flopsy back with the same ceremony with which she might pass a state treasure. Thank you for sharing your comfort object, Lily Turner. It was kind. A soft chime sounded, and a portion of the wall illuminated with Vexeran script. The Queen glanced at it and straightened her posture. My advisors grow impatient. The council session cannot be delayed indefinitely. She rose to her full height. I must attend to my duties now. Blake stood quickly, taking Lily's hand. Of course. Thank you for your time, Your Majesty. We should return to my workstation as well. No, Queen Zalera said firmly. I have a proposition for you, Blake Turner. Our embassy on this station has been operating with minimal staff due to security concerns. We require individuals who can maintain our facilities without requiring access to sensitive areas. Blake blinked in surprise. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you a position as head of custodial services for the Vexeran Embassy. The compensation would be triple your current salary, with private quarters for you and your offspring within the embassy complex. Blake's jaw dropped. Triple. With educational provisions for the small one, the Queen added. Vexeran educational methods are highly efficient. She would benefit greatly. It was an incredible offer, life-changing for him and Lily. But working directly for the Vexerans? The same empire that had subjugated 16 worlds in retribution for a terrorist attack? I'm honored by the offer, Blake said carefully, but I would need to think about it. Moving Lily to a new environment is a big decision. The Queen's head tilted slightly. You hesitate. Most humans would accept immediately. Most humans aren't making decisions for a 6-year-old, Blake replied. Lily's well-being comes first. A responsible perspective, Queen Zalera acknowledged. She turned to Lily. Would you be agreeable to residing in the Vexeran Embassy, small one? Lily looked thoughtful. Do you have other kids there? There are currently no offspring in the embassy, the Queen admitted. But arrangements could be made for socialization opportunities. And could Daddy still be with me? That is the arrangement I am proposing. Lily nodded seriously. I think it would be okay then. As long as we're together. The Queen's inner eyelids flickered again. Your attachment to your caretaker is notable. A Vexeran guard entered after a respectful chime, obviously sent to hurry the Queen along. She acknowledged him with a slight gesture. Consider my offer, Blake Turner, Queen Zalera said. My cultural attaché will provide the details. You have 3 of your Earth days to decide. Thank you, Your Majesty. Blake responded, bowing slightly. As they were escorted from the embassy suite, Blake's mind raced with implications. The job offer was unexpected enough, but the entire interaction had been surreal. What were the chances that the Queen of the Vexaran Imperium would see a resemblance between his human daughter and her lost Vexaran child? And what would it mean for Lily to grow up in the Vexaran embassy, under the watchful eye of Queen Zalera? Back in the main corridor, station manager Garrett was waiting, his expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "Everything okay, Turner?" he asked, eyeing the Vexaran guards who had escorted them out. "I think so," Blake replied, still processing everything that had happened. "The Queen offered me a job at the Vexaran embassy." Garrett's eyebrows shot up. "She what?" "That's unprecedented." "I know. I need time to think about it." "Take the rest of the day off," Garrett said. "This is way beyond normal circumstances. Go home, talk it over with your daughter." Blake nodded gratefully. As they walked toward the residential section of the station, Lily skipped alongside him, apparently unfazed by their encounter with alien royalty. "Daddy," she said suddenly, "I think the Queen is still really sad about her daughter." Blake squeezed her hand gently. "I think you're right, sweetheart. Maybe we could help her not be so sad." Blake looked down at his remarkable child, wondering at her capacity for empathy. "Maybe we could," he agreed softly. Neither of them noticed the Vexaran security drone that followed discreetly behind them, its recording devices capturing every word, sending the data directly to Queen Zalera as she prepared to address the Galactic Council on matters of war and peace. In her private chamber, the Queen reviewed the surveillance footage, her attention fixed on the small human child who, against all logic, reminded her of Celia. For the first time since her daughter's death, Queen Zalera felt something other than the cold determination for vengeance that had driven her policies for 5 cycles. The human child had spoken of souls like stars, forming constellations across the void. It was a poetic concept, nothing like Vexaran beliefs about the ancestors. And yet, the image lingered in the Queen's mind as she prepared to decide the fate of millions. Perhaps there was something to learn from these inefficient humans after all. The following 3 days passed in a blur for Blake. He researched everything he could about Vexaran culture, consulted with the station's cultural affairs officer, and even spoke with the one human diplomat who had previously worked closely with the Vexarans. Everyone expressed the same mixture of surprise and caution about the Queen's unusual offer. The Vexarans value efficiency above all else, the diplomat had explained. They don't make decisions based on sentiment. If the Queen has taken a personal interest in you and your daughter, there must be a strategic reason behind it. But Blake couldn't shake the feeling that what he'd witnessed in the Queen's private chambers had been genuine emotion, a connection to his daughter that transcended political calculation. On the evening of the 3rd day, as he tucked Lily into bed in their small station apartment, he still hadn't made a final decision. "What do you think, sweetheart?" he asked, smoothing her dark curls away from her forehead. "Do you want to move to the Vexaran embassy?" Lily hugged Mr. Flopsy to her chest, considering the question with a seriousness that sometimes startled Blake. "I think the Queen needs friends," she said finally. "She's all alone with her heart hurt." Blake smiled gently. "This isn't just about helping the Queen, Lily. This is about what's best for us, for you especially. But helping people is good, right? That's what you always say." "Yes, it is." Blake sighed, recognizing his own teachings coming back to him through his daughter's simple wisdom. "But the Vexarans are very different from us. Their culture, their rules, everything would be new and sometimes confusing. Like when we first came to the station?" Lily asked. "I was scared then too, but now it's home." Blake nodded, remembering their difficult adjustment period after leaving Earth. "It would be another big change. But we'd be together," Lily said with absolute confidence, as if that single fact made everything manageable. And perhaps she was right. They had weathered the loss of Sarah together. They had adapted to life on a space station populated primarily by non-humans. As long as they had each other, perhaps they could navigate life in the Vexaran embassy as well. "All right," Blake said, making his decision. "We'll accept the Queen's offer." Lily's face lit up with a smile. "Can I tell her about the stars when we see her again?" What stars, sweetheart? The constellation stars. Mommy said sometimes stars make pictures together even though they're really far apart. Maybe the queen and her daughter are like that now. Far apart, but still making a picture together. Blake's throat tightened with emotion. That's beautiful, Lily. I think you could tell her that, if the moment seems right. The next morning, Blake formally accepted the position through the Vexaran cultural attaché, a slender, scholarly Vexaran named Talon. The attaché seemed surprised by Blake's decision, but quickly shifted to explaining the logistics of their move. The Queen has authorized immediate relocation, Talon explained. A security team will transfer your belongings today. You will report to the embassy tomorrow at the beginning of the first shift. That's very fast, Blake said, somewhat taken aback. Efficiency is valued, Talon replied simply. The Queen does not delay once decisions are made. True to the attaché's word, a team of Vexaran security personnel arrived at their apartment within hours. They were efficient but not unkind, taking special care with Lily's belongings when she explained the importance of certain toys and books. By evening, Blake and Lily were settling into their new quarters within the Vexaran embassy. The space was 3 times larger than their previous apartment, with separate bedrooms, a living area, and even a small garden space with plants from both Earth and Vexara. The environmental controls had been calibrated for human comfort rather than Vexaran preferences, which would have been too warm and dry for humans. It's like a palace, Lily whispered, exploring the rooms with wide-eyed wonder. It's certainly nicer than anywhere we've lived before, Blake agreed, equally impressed by the accommodations. A soft chime announced a visitor. When Blake opened the door, he found Talon waiting outside. The Queen requests your daughter's presence for the evening meal, the attaché announced. You will accompany her, of course. Blake hesitated. We were just getting settled. The Queen's requests are not optional, Talon said, though his tone remained neutral rather than threatening. Appropriate attire has been provided in your sleeping chambers. After Talon departed, Blake found the promised clothing, simple but elegant garments made from a flowing material that resembled silk but was lighter and seemed to adjust to body temperature. There was a child-sized version for Lily in a shade of blue that perfectly matched her eyes. Are these space clothes, Daddy? Lily asked, touching the fabric with wonder. I guess they're Vexaran formal wear, Blake replied, examining his own garment. Let's get changed. We're having dinner with the Queen. Dinner with Queen Zalera was an elaborate affair held in a private dining chamber. The room featured a large central table that accommodated both Vexaran and human physiology, with specialized seating for each. The walls displayed shifting patterns that Blake realized were representations of Vexaran star systems, a moving star map that changed to show different regions of their empire. Queen Zalera arrived after they were seated, accompanied by only 2 guards who positioned themselves discreetly by the entrance. She wore simpler attire than during their first meeting, though her crown of crystallized light remained. Blake Turner. Small Lily. You have accepted my offer, the Queen observed as she took her seat at the head of the table. We have, Your Majesty, Blake confirmed. We're grateful for the opportunity. The Queen's vertical pupils dilated slightly as she looked at Lily, who was staring in fascination at the moving star maps on the walls. Your quarters are satisfactory? The Queen inquired. They're amazing, Lily answered before Blake could speak. We have a garden inside our house now. The integration of living systems within habitation spaces is standard Vexaran design, Queen Zalera explained. We find it increases efficiency by providing oxygen renewal and psychological benefits. It's beautiful, Blake said sincerely. Everything has been more than satisfactory. Servers brought in the first course, a soup that steamed gently in shallow bowls. Blake noticed that while the presentation was similar, the contents of their bowls differed from the Queen's. Your meals have been prepared according to human nutritional requirements and taste preferences, Queen Zalera explained, noticing his observation. Vexaran biochemistry is not compatible with yours. Thank you for the consideration, Blake said, impressed by the level of detail in their preparations. As they ate, the Queen asked surprisingly personal questions about their life on Earth, their adjustment to station living, and Lily's education. Blake answered honestly, occasionally steering the conversation when questions became too intrusive. Throughout the meal, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being evaluated, though for what purpose he couldn't determine. Near the end of the meal, Lily looked up at the star map walls and then at the Queen. "Do Vexorans have constellations?" she asked suddenly. Queen Zalera tilted her head. "Explain what you mean by this term." "Pictures in the stars," Lily clarified. "On Earth, people looked at stars and saw pictures, like connect the dots. There's one called Orion who's a hunter, and one called Ursa Major that's a big bear." Pattern recognition applied to stellar arrangements. "Yes, ancient Vexorans practiced this before we developed space travel. Now we map stars based on their actual spatial relationships rather than their apparent positions from a planetary surface." "But the old pictures were pretty," Lily said with the conviction of a child. "They were imprecise," the Queen corrected gently. "Sometimes pretty things don't have to be precise," Lily countered, surprising Blake with her boldness. "Like Mr. Flopsy. He doesn't look exactly like a real rabbit, but I love him anyway." The Queen's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. That sign of emotion Blake had noticed before. An interesting perspective. She gestured to the wall, and the star map shifted to show a new configuration. This was called the Hunter's Spear in ancient Vexoran mythology. The pattern bears no relation to the actual positions of these 7 stars, but our ancestors saw meaning in their arrangement. Lily studied the pattern with intense concentration. "It's beautiful," she declared. "Yes," the Queen agreed softly. "It is." After dinner, as they walked back to their quarters, Blake reflected on the strange evening. The Queen of the Vexoran Imperium had shared a meal with them, discussed star patterns with his 6-year-old daughter, and shown what seemed like genuine interest in their lives. It defied everything he had heard about Vexoran royalty. Over the following weeks, Blake settled into his new role managing the embassy's custodial services. The work was more administrative than his previous position, overseeing a small team of maintenance drones and specialized cleaning systems rather than doing the physical work himself. The Vexoran staff treated him with formal politeness, though most kept their distance. Lily, however, flourished. As promised, educational arrangements had been made. A combination of virtual learning programs and sessions with a Vexoran educational specialist who seemed fascinated by human cognitive development. More surprisingly, Lily was occasionally summoned to spend time with Queen Zalera during the monarch's limited personal hours. These meetings concerned Blake at first, but when he observed them together from a respectful distance, what he saw was remarkable. The imposing alien queen would listen with apparent interest as Lily shared stories or asked questions about Vexoran culture. Sometimes they would simply sit in the embassy's garden area, Lily drawing pictures while the Queen reviewed diplomatic communications. "The Queen showed me pictures of her daughter today," Lily told Blake one evening as he tucked her into bed. Her name was hard to say, but she had pretty blue scales. Blake sat down on the edge of her bed. Did talking about her daughter make the Queen sad? Lily thought for a moment. "A little, I think. But she said talking about her helps remember the good things. Just like we talk about Mommy." "That's right," Blake agreed, touched by the parallel. "And she asked me to call her Zila when we're alone, not Your Majesty. Is that okay?" Blake was stunned. The use of a shortened, informal name was completely contrary to everything he'd learned about Vexoran protocol. "She asked you to call her by a nickname?" Lily nodded. "She said titles are for public functions, not for friends." "And she considers you a friend?" Blake asked carefully. "I think so." Lily hugged Mr. Flopsy closer. "She's not so scary once you know her. She's just sad and doesn't have anyone to talk to." As the weeks turned into months, Blake began to notice subtle changes in the embassy's operations. Security protocols that had been rigidly enforced were selectively relaxed. Human-style furnishings appeared in common areas. The kitchen began preparing Earth cuisine for diplomatic functions, introducing alien dignitaries to human food alongside traditional Vexoran offerings. Most significantly, Queen Zalera's diplomatic positions began to shift. In Galactic Council sessions, which Blake now had clearance to observe via secure feeds, The Queen spoke of cultural exchange rather than dominance, of cooperation rather than subjugation. Her hardline stance on the Outer Rim territories, the worlds conquered after her daughter's death, gradually evolved toward a more measured approach focused on stability rather than punishment. Not everyone approved of these changes. Blake occasionally overheard whispered conversations among the Queen's advisors, concerns about her softening stance and the human influence. But none dared to challenge her directly. 6 months after their move to the embassy, Blake was summoned to a private meeting with Queen Zalera. He found her in her personal study, a vast room filled with artifacts from across the galaxy and holographic displays showing real-time data from throughout the Vexaran Imperium. "Blake Turner," she greeted him formally. "Your service has been satisfactory." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Blake remained standing until she gestured for him to sit. "I wish to discuss your daughter," the Queen said directly. Blake felt a flicker of concern. "Is something wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Quite the opposite." Queen Zalera's posture shifted to what Blake had come to recognize as her more relaxed stance. "Lily has provided an unexpected perspective that has been valuable to me personally and to the Imperium as a whole. She has a way of seeing things clearly," Blake acknowledged with pride. "Indeed, her cognitive patterns are refreshingly direct, unconstrained by political calculation or cultural expectation." The Queen paused. "I have received inquiries from the Galactic Council's Cultural Exchange Program. They wish to establish a more formalized children's initiative, bringing offspring from various species together to foster greater understanding between our civilizations." Blake nodded, wondering where this was leading. "I am considering supporting this initiative," the Queen continued. "Lily would be an ideal representative for humanity. She has already demonstrated an exceptional ability to bridge cultural divides." "You want Lily to become some kind of child ambassador?" Blake asked, surprised. "With appropriate safeguards and your continued guardianship," the Queen clarified. "It would involve periodic gatherings, cultural education, and carefully supervised interactions with offspring from council member species." Blake considered the proposal. "I need to know more about the program, the time commitment, how it would affect her education." "All reasonable concerns," Queen Zalera acknowledged. "Complete information will be provided." "This is not a command, Blake Turner. It is a request that you may decline without consequence to your position here." The fact that she was asking rather than ordering spoke volumes about how their relationship had evolved. "I'll discuss it with Lily and review the information," Blake promised. The Queen nodded. "There is one additional matter." She rose and moved to a secured cabinet on the far wall. When she returned, she carried a small crystal container. "This is for Lily." Blake accepted the container carefully. Inside was a delicate necklace with a pendant that seemed to capture and refract light in impossible ways, creating tiny constellations within its crystalline structure. "This belonged to Celia," Queen Zalera explained, her voice softening. "It is a Starweaver pendant, traditionally given to Vexaran royal offspring when they begin their education. It contains astronomical data for the entire Vexaran home system, but it also serves as a reminder of our connection to the cosmos." Blake looked up in shock. "Your Majesty, I can't accept this. It's too valuable, too personal." "You misunderstand," the Queen interrupted gently. "I am not giving away Celia's memory. I am sharing it. The pendant is a copy, created using the original pattern. Celia would have wanted her knowledge to continue being useful." She hesitated, then added, "And I believe she would have approved of Lily." Deeply moved, Blake carefully secured the container. "Thank you. This means more than I can express." "Words are unnecessary," Queen Zalera said. "I have observed human emotional responses sufficiently to interpret yours." Her inner eyelids flickered rapidly. "Before you go, there is one question I wish to ask." "Of course." "When we first met, Lily spoke of souls like stars forming constellations across the void. This concept has remained with me. Do you believe there is truth in this perspective?" Blake considered the question carefully. "I believe that connections between beings, whether family, friends, or even different species, create patterns of meaning that transcend physical distance or even death. Whether we call those connections souls, consciousness, or something else. They form a kind of constellation that helps us navigate our lives. Queen Zalera was silent for a long moment. An imprecise but compelling metaphor, she said finally. Much like the ancient star patterns. Sometimes the most important truths can't be precisely measured, Blake suggested. Perhaps. The Queen's posture straightened, returning to her more formal bearing. You may go, Blake Turner. Please convey my regards to Lily. As Blake left the Queen's study, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. A chance encounter, a resemblance that crossed species boundaries, and a child's simple wisdom about grief and connection had somehow influenced the policies of an interstellar empire. That evening, when he gave Lily the Starweaver pendant, her eyes widened with wonder as tiny constellations danced within the crystal. It's like holding all the stars, she whispered. It belonged to the Queen's daughter, Blake explained. She wanted you to have it. Lily touched the pendant reverently. Does this make us family with the Queen? Blake smiled. Not exactly, but maybe something just as important. It makes us friends. 1 year after their first encounter with Queen Zalera, Blake and Lily stood in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council as the Children's Cultural Exchange Initiative was formally launched. 12 children from different species, including Lily, had been selected as the first cohort of what was being called Constellation Ambassadors, a name inspired by Lily's metaphor about souls and stars. Queen Zalera presided over the ceremony, her formal address to the council outlining a new vision for galactic cooperation. The Outer Rim territories, once subjugated as tribute colonies, were being transitioned to self-governance under a collaborative framework that respected local cultures while maintaining security. The future of our collective civilizations depends not on dominance, but on understanding, the Queen declared. Not on isolation, but on connection. Like stars in the void, we form patterns of meaning only when we recognize our relationships to one another. Blake recognized the echo of Lily's words in the Queen's speech. As he watched his daughter standing proudly among children from across the galaxy, the Starweaver pendant gleaming at her throat, he felt a profound sense of wonder at how significantly their lives had changed. After the ceremony, Queen Zalera approached them in a rare public acknowledgement of their special relationship. Your offspring brings honor to humanity, she told Blake formally, then bent slightly to address Lily directly. The first constellation cohort will meet tomorrow to begin cultural exchange activities. Are you prepared, Ambassador Turner? Lily nodded solemnly, then broke into a smile. I'm going to tell them about Mr. Flopsy first. Everyone needs to know about comfort objects. A ripple of what Blake now recognized as amusement passed through the Queen's features. A suitable beginning. She straightened and addressed Blake again. The station commandant has requested your expertise regarding integration of human comfort features in the diplomatic wing. Your position will be expanded to include cross-cultural environmental consulting if you are agreeable. I'd be honored, Blake replied, recognizing the promotion for what it was. As the Queen moved away to speak with other dignitaries, Blake knelt beside Lily. How are you feeling about tomorrow, sweetheart? Nervous. Lily shook her head, her curls bouncing. Zila says that when we make new friends, we make new constellations. I'm going to make the biggest constellation ever. Blake hugged her close, marveling at her confidence and wisdom. I think you already have, Lily. I think you already have. Later that evening, in the privacy of her royal chambers, Queen Zalera reviewed the day's events. On her personal display was an image captured during the ceremony. Lily Turner standing with the other young ambassadors, her human features alight with excitement and possibility. Beside this image, the Queen had placed a hologram of Celia, captured during her last educational assessment before the terrorist attack. The two children could not have looked more different. One human with soft skin and dark curls, the other Vexaran with iridescent scales and sensory tendrils. And yet, in their expressions, there was something undeniably similar, a curiosity and openness to the universe around them. Different stars, Queen Zalera murmured to herself, using a phrase Lily had taught her. Same constellation. For the first time since her daughter's death, the Queen of the Vexaran Imperium felt the cold grip of vengeance loosen its hold on her heart. In its place grew something new, not the absence of grief, but its transformation into purpose. Not the forgetting of loss, but the discovery of meaning beyond it. The human child had shown her a different way to honor Celia's memory, not through conquest and retribution, but through connection and growth. It was inefficient, imprecise, and deeply, profoundly right. Perhaps, the Queen reflected, the humans had something valuable to teach the galaxy after all. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.